with Handloader TV, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have something very exciting for you. We have the FN57 handgun, chambered and of course 5.7 by 28. And before we get into anything, I think it's important to understand how this firearm functions and operates, especially if you're going to do any amount of hand loading for this particular handgun. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right into it. We'll field strip it and show you how this thing works. Okay, so first up, we'll check the firearm. It is in fact unloaded. Then we'll flip it over, remove the magazine. And then this is our takedown lever here. Push that to the rear and drop the slide. At which point it will pop right off, removing the frame and the slide. From here we can take the barrel out. And there's your basic field strip. Now while we have it disassembled, it's important to note this firearm functions on a basic simple blowback principle. So here we have our recoil spring, which is attached to the barrel, and it has this little bushing here, which you can see moves when under tension. And then we have our firing pin housed right here. And you can see it's a very short distance for the hammer to travel. And then some other things I want to point out on the frame here. You can see how the slide attaches. I like to call this like a tricycle principle. You have two tabs here, which the slide rides on. And then you have this long piece right here, which is where the front of the slide will actually ride on. And then this has an exposed trigger bar right here. And here's your safety. And the FN57 also does feature a firing pin block. So to reassemble it, all you have to do is take your slide, reinstall the barrel, which is rather simple. Take the slide and match it up like so. Slide it back on, and then ensure that tab is forward once again. And then you are good to go. Pretty simple all in all. And you can see as the firearm is fired, the barrel will reciprocate rearward and along with the slide, and at some point the barrel will reach a stop and the slide will continue, extract and eject the cartridge. The FN57 does feature an internal extractor. Whether you're a fan of that or not is up to you, but it has one. And one other thing to point out with this particular handgun is since it's a tricycle design, this accessory rail here, when there's any amount of pressure applied to it, you can see it kind of tweaks just ever so slightly, and something to consider. So there you have it, the FN57 field strip and reassembly, basic operating principles, and another nice feature to point out while we're here is it has really nice 3-dot adjustable sights. Okay, I've got the FN57 here. 12 rounds loaded up, ready to go. Steel down range. Let's see how fast and accurate I can run through this. Here we go. Alright, so we've got our FN57 handgun locked down in a Ransom International handgun rest. We have a target at 15 yards, and we actually just finished testing the Ruger 5.7 handgun in this same rest at the same target with the same load. We're using a 40 grain Hornady VMAX, and so now we're going to go ahead for our FN video and test this handgun and see how it does. So here we go. This load is using True Blue powder, a 5.3 grain charge, 40 grain Hornady VMAX, and FN cases. We'll go ahead and see how they group. So here we have accurate number 7, a 7 grain charge. We're using a 45 grain Sierra Hornet, soft point, CCI 400s, and FN cases. Same 1.490 overall length. We'll see how these guys do. For this load, we're changing it up a bit using Vitavori N340 powder, a 4.3 grain charge, and a 35 grain Hornady VMAX. We're using the same FN cases and CCI 400 primers. This load shot really well in our Ruger test gun, so let's see how it does with the FN. For this load, accurate number 5, 5.3 grain charge, 45 grain Sierra soft point Spitzer, FN cases, CCI 400 primers, overall loaded length 1.575 inches. Here we go. We just got back from the range after putting a ton of rounds through this FN57. We put about 200 factory loaded ammunition through it, and then we went ahead and put about 300 hand loads through it. And we didn't have a single malfunction the whole time, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. And also, before we get too far into it, I want to point out some things I noticed right off the bat in shooting this gun. So I like a high grip, as high of a grip as I can on a particular firearm. And this one, it's not quite there. It doesn't feel terrible, but it didn't really fit my hands very well. But everybody's hands are different. The safety is in a little bit different position, something to note, but not bad. It's pretty comfortable and easy to throw off. The biggest gripe I have with this firearm is the trigger. Now it's really crisp and it's really clean, and we are clear here, but it's really heavy. It's got a nice reset to it, but it breaks on an average of 5 pulls with a Wheeler Engineering trigger pull gauge at about 8 pounds, which is pretty heavy for a handgun if you ask me. But I do like the sights. They're 3-dot sights and the rear sight is adjustable, and it was zeroed right out of the box, which is really nice. So before we go ahead and dive into our targets and our data here, I want to mention reloading, because we did run quite a bit of hand-loaded ammunition through this firearm. FN actually released a notice with this firearm, and we received it when we received the firearm. And they do not like the idea of hand loads being run through the firearm. However, we managed to get ours to work just fine. Special care was taken to preserve the special coating on the case. All we did was wipe them down before sizing, and we had no issues. However, there is a danger with this firearm, and you can have an out-of-battery detonation if you're not careful. The gun could unlock prematurely. So what happens is, this gun, even if the slides back a little bit, it'll still fire. And that's something that you should be careful with, and powder selection becomes very critical in these delayed blowback firearms. If the pressure hasn't dropped in the chamber sufficiently, it could unlock and there'll still be pressure in there. You could damage your firearm. So it's up to you to decide whether you have the knowledge and experience to safely reload this cartridge. And as always, stick with reputable data sources such as Lyman, Western Powders, or loaddata.com. So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right into our targets. All of our testing was conducted at a distance of 15 yards with this handgun. And the first thing we did was we took it and we strapped it into a Ransom International handgun rest, and we shot a 5-shot group. And for this test, the conditions were pretty terrible. It was really windy that day, and so we got a 1.45-inch group at 15 yards. Still nothing to sneeze at, but I think the wind played a big factor in that. Then, thankfully, when we moved on to testing our hand loads, the wind settled down a little bit, and our groups tightened up. So for our first hand load here, we have a 40 grain Hornady VMAX using True Blue powder, one of my favorite powders for the 5.7 cartridge. And it grouped into a 0.88 inch group. I'll take it, not bad at all. And we had really good standard deviation numbers and an extreme spread of only 18. So for the first group, not bad at all. Then we went ahead and switched over to accurate number 7 powder, and we used a charge weight of 7 grains. Now just to show you how finicky this little 5.7 cartridge is, this load grouped really well in our FN test gun, but it did not group well in our Ruger. Our Ruger liked a 7.1 grain charge, so just a tenth of a grain can make a big difference in this cartridge. And this FN grouped into a 0.495 inch group. Pretty impressive. And then moving along, we changed it up and we went to Vitivori N340 powder and a 35 grain Hornady VMAX bullet. This particular load grouped into a 1.57 inch group, and it's still not bad for a handgun at 15 yards. For our final target, we have a 0.72 inch group, roughly, and we used accurate number 5 powder, a 5.3 grain charge, and a 45 grain Sierra Spitzer. This gun was eating him up, and it did a pretty good job on all these 45 grain bullets, but this one was the best out of all of them. So, all in all, I'm very happy with the performance of this FN. I think it did great, it grouped pretty good, and the reliability was outstanding. So to sum it all up, this gun definitely has some pros and some cons to it. I do really like the sights on it. I think they work well. I do like the fact that it grouped really well and it had 100% reliability in all our testing. However, there is one thing I want to point out to you guys before we go here, and it's the fact that this firearm has a magazine safety. So if you pull the trigger, it's dead until there's a magazine inserted, and then the hammer will drop. Now to some people that's a big deal, and to some people it's not. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of that. However, I thought it was important to note in the video. So all in all, there you have it. There's the FN57. We want to thank you for watching this video. We do appreciate it. We hope that you'll like it and share it with your friends. And be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you're notified when we post our next video. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below. And until next time, good shooting and happy hand loading.